Welcome everybody to Monday Night Live. My name's Arden, and today we're going to talk about managing change, particularly managing change in 2022. I've got with me Nancy Loates-Taylor. I've known Nancy for a long time, from when I worked at Barclays Management Training Centre at Ashdown Park. Nancy was a trainer there, and we've remained friends for a number of years, quite a lot of years actually. But Nancy won't let me tell you how many years that is. 3 words to describe Nancy: professional, knowledgeable, and fun. Nancy was born in America, in the Midwest, obtained an MBA, joined Bank of America, came to England, worked for the Bank of America in London, found an architect, married him, and lives in the Surrey Hills, which is a fabulous place where we go walking our dog sometime. Welcome, Nancy. And Nancy, today we're going to talk about something which is really important, been going on for ages, ever since the world began, but things seem to be hotting up as we go into 2022. Over to you, Nancy, managing change.
Thank you, Derek. And good afternoon, everyone here in the European time frame. Good morning, those of you from the States. Yes, so my session today is really about managing and adapting to change. And it's a subject in which I've done lots of work on leadership workshops, actually communication workshops, and organizations and companies that are needed to help their people deal with change, whether they're going through mergers or demergers or change of direction, new business model, whatever, but also a lot in my coaching practice. And so some of what I'll be sharing today, I'm sure many of you know, but it's a reminder for you. And I hope to share some nuggets that will get you thinking. And as always, what I like to do as a facilitator is to get all of you to be engaged. So I'll be asking you to participate today on the chat box. And also we're going to have one session of breakout room. Okay, everybody up for that? Thumbs up. Great. I'm glad to hear it. Glad to see it. Now I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. So can everybody see that? Now, one thing I'm going to say, and I don't generally have to do this, but I've had a cold and virus recently, not the dreaded one. And so my pacing and my breathing might be a little slower at times. So I make sure I don't cough. All right, so please bear with me with that. But I'm getting better, so that's why I had to postpone from last week. So my point today is really to talk about managing and adapting to change and addressing the challenges for yourself and for others. So some of this will be for your use, but it's also maybe for your use with people that you work with as well. Okay, so next slide. Where's the next? There we go. Charles Darwin really summarized it best when he said, as you can see on screen, it's not the strongest of the species that survived, nor the most intelligent, but the one most responsive to change. And have we had a lot of change recently? I started doing this work, about 8 years ago with some big corporations, global corporations around helping their people deal with change. And it's only accelerated. So it's absolutely something that we all have to be aware of and deal with. So one of the things that we focus on, and I know some of the other facilitators have brought this up before, is about the VUCA world. So we live in what is really quite a VUCA world nowadays. We've got so many inputs coming into us from the news, from the social media platforms, from so many different directions that it really makes us feel, yes, the world is volatile, things happening, and of course there are volcanoes going off all the time. We've had 3 recently, one in Indonesia, one in Spain, and one in Hawaii. So yes, there is volatility out there of the volcanoes and all other sorts. The uncertainties. I was just talking to a lady at the weekend who had planned her 80th birthday party last year in May 2020. And they were uncertain whether they were going to have it then. They didn't. They rescheduled it, they rescheduled it, they rescheduled it. I attended it last week. It was the 4th time. So much uncertainty. And of course, the complexity of modern life and all the information out there. Plus, do you know who to believe? You know, the ambiguity of things. So essentially, dealing with change is what we all have to do now, and perhaps more consciously than we did before. So the point is that in times of change, as Eric Hoffer nicely points out here, the learners inherit the earth. So while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. Now, I know many of you have been in banking, and boy, has banking changed from the times when we started out, whether in the late 70s, early 80s to now, other industries as well. You thought you had a career path in one particular part of the business, and it changed and changed again and changed again. So we had to keep on our toes as learners. And so what I encourage you to think about is that if you develop a growth mindset, that can help too. Now, how many of you have ever heard of Carol Dweck and her work on growth mindsets? So I can see one or two hands. I have not got the greatest view here. I could only see about 3 of you. Anybody else putting up, oops. Anyway, I just want to see more of you. Sorry. Let me, there we go. I got a few more of you. So the point being that this idea that we aren't just fixed in what we know, we have the capability of continuing to learn and continuing to appreciate things and continuing to develop our own capabilities. So that growth mindset is a lot about your beliefs in yourself. So 2 approaches that you can take. One is to be an agile learner. Wouldn't we all like to still be able to do that sort of thing if you ever were able to? And the second is to recognize your circles. So we'll go through those 2 so you can appreciate what's going on there and investigate for yourself, okay? So the point being, what's an agile learner? Well, there are 2 kinds of learning that we've identified here. And there we go, the traditional and the agile. So rather than having you shout out various things to me, what I'd like to invite you each to do is to go onto the chat box and put, first of all, T for traditional, and put, what do you think are the characteristics of a traditional learning or a traditional learner? What are some of the things that you might expect from the traditional? Okay, when I'm coaching young people in business, many times they've come from a great educational background, they've got top scores, they've, you know, gotten great degrees, they've gone very much down the traditional learning path. But when they get to work, it's very interesting. Excuse me. Very interesting. They expect the same rules to apply. Excuse me. So what have we got here? Somebody said left brain, yes. So in the classroom, somebody else said textbooks, absolutely. Look at that stack. Taught in a classroom. Oh my God, and hasn't that gone through a change recently? I have some personal friends that are teachers, and wow, what used to be classroom is now virtual classroom. Someone tells you how to do it, absolutely, you know, in terms of it's being told, it's being shown, that sort of approach. You have an instructor, reading widely, yes. Getting formal qualifications, absolutely. And so it's getting those, the textbook, you know, based, and also getting those formal qualifications. Becoming an expert is on the list too, in terms of, you know, becoming qualified. So it's perhaps having deep knowledge, not broad knowledge. So it's really perhaps something that's a little more narrow in scope. Okay, and so it's being taught, oh, I love this overhead projector. God, I can remember the days of the overhead projector, can't you all? I know that some are still used, but there is more modern equipment now too. And yes, having a syllabus to follow. Absolutely, so you guys have nailed it more than I've got there. Analytical skills, problem solving skills, and somebody that gets top grades, yes, the traditional learning. And what about Agile learning? So give me an A for Agile. And what would that sound like to you, or what would that be like for you? Somebody that's doing Agile. I like this, Nigel. Anytime, anywhere, using a variety of learning styles. It's like that Martini advert from the 80s, yes. Online, going and finding what you need to know, finding people to ask. It's absolutely a way of asking how and why things work. It's really based around a lot of curiosity. Oh, I like this. Derek, have you seen? Somebody said Monday Night Live.
Yeah, my friend Michael O'Hara, fantastic.
Yeah, self-directed and intuitive. So it's more learner-driven. I agree with you, Jill. And watching and learning from others, yes. But it's getting lots of input from different places, being very resourceful and resilient. Perhaps being open to feedback too there in terms of what's going on, watching and learning from others, but also getting others to share with you. So yes, blended learning is a part of it too. And Paresh says less textbook, absolutely less textbook. So it's much more agile, of course, in terms of the way it's said there. And of course, one has to think about perhaps using more emotional intelligence in the learning. So you might be talking to other people and taking an appreciation from other people, which Alex just said, yeah, peer groups. So it's less structured, that sort of thing. So yes, you very much got the picture there on that one. And it's also about observation and comparing. So it's not always doing things in the one way, perhaps comparing what's been done in other functions, other industries, other people, other parts of the world, other cultures, whatever, so that you can incorporate that in. And learning on the go. So these lunch and learn walks. Now, who does lunch and learn walks, Nigel? That sounds interesting. Yeah, tell me a little bit about that, just a moment.
Okay, what I tend to do is to download a podcast and then go for a walk, perhaps have a bite, or going to somewhere a little bit more sort of scenic and just sit, relax, listen, tune into the environment and absorb what the learning is. And I find that really invigorating. And when you come back, you've then got lots of notes, lots of questions. And sometimes hearing the same podcast 2 or 3 times, you learn something different each time. Yeah. So I would advocate it.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to take learning. And that's what's so amazing about our modern world with all the communications resources that we have. But sometimes it's almost too much. So it's being able to curate it or to find somebody that recommends. So when somebody recommends a podcast, that's particularly useful. And maybe, Derek, you ought to have a recommended podcasts as part of Monday Night.
Oh, I have actually. My 120 podcasts, which is Monday Night Live, are all on Spotify if you search for me. So there's 120 for people to go through first.
Yeah. Oh, okay. 120 hours worth almost. Yeah. Okay.
Almost, yeah. Almost.
Yeah. Eva, I like that. The university in your car. So as you're commuting, perhaps, or going to meetings, you can, in fact, listen to new information in your car. Absolutely. Great. So you get the point here. The point isn't that we want you all to be agile learners and forget being traditional learners. The point here is to actually know there's going to be a time for traditional learning and a time for agile, and it's getting the balance right. So it's you may have to unlearn some habits that you have from the traditional learning, or in fact, add in some new ones from the agile. But that's one of the areas to absolutely consider. Now, the second approach to explore is what I'm going to call your circles. Okay, now I know all of you know one of the founders of really personal development and helping people, Stephen Covey, and I think, Derek, did you have the book to hand? My Debbie McGee. Here's my Debbie McGee showing you one. Okay.
Part of the service.
Stephen Covey came up with this model, and it's a great model around how you can consider a situation. And I use it a lot in coaching and also in leadership work. So what can you control? If you can't control it, what can you influence? And if you can't control or influence, what do you have to adapt to or evolve your thinking? So this is a model that I've used, as I was saying, with coaching, particularly when people come to me with a particular stressor, something that's bothering them, something they want to, address and work together with me. And so we might use this model if it's appropriate. But let me just share a very simple example of how this can help you. A simple example. So let's think about you've got a great meeting coming up. You've booked a time with a client. It's the first deal you're going to do with this client. You're going to be signing the documentation today. You've got all the papers that you want to go to the meeting with them. Yeah, this is when we can still meet with people. And so you've given yourself, you think, okay, it could take me 45 minutes to drive there. So you've left yourself plenty of time. You've left an hour ahead of time. And you get out on the motorway, driving to go to this meeting. And lo and behold, somebody has been inconsiderate enough to have an accident. Okay, and you're stuck in a queue, for the Americans on the call, a line, and traffic's gridlocked. And what can you do? You're not going to make the meeting in the time that you thought. You thought you'd left a little bit of extra time. We all do as professionals, but it's out the window. So rather than sit there and scream obscenities in your car and bang the steering wheel and pull your hair out and swear some more, think about, well, what do I have control over in this situation? Well, I can't get the cars to move out of the way so I can carry on. What I can control, first of all, is my mindset and attitude towards the situation, and think, okay, we'll get through this. We'll still make it work. It's positive. What's under your control, perhaps to influence some people? Could you influence the police to clear the motorway quicker? Not really, but you could influence the client by calling them up and say, look, this is what I'm caught in. I'll be with you probably 15 to 20 minutes late. Can we put the meeting back a bit? And influence them to do that. And otherwise, you have to adapt and evolve your thinking to your situation. Okay, so that's just a simple example to bring to life this sort of model. But of course, what I've experienced and what I, working together with people, when this model becomes particularly useful is when stress arises and people feel like they've got that little tiny bit of control, very little influence, and everything they have to adapt and evolve to. And they feel very stressed by that. And so that's the situation where you help people to get that control circle larger by helping them understand, well, what can you control in this situation? What more can you do to influence? Who are the players you can influence in the situation? And therefore, how are you going to have to adapt and evolve your thinking? So what we're thinking of here is we're going to do a breakout session now. Derek, you there? Yes. Sorry?
I'm here.
Yeah, ready to put it into play. And what I'm going to ask you to address is, in your team, so however many people you've got, one of you volunteers a current change you're dealing with or you've recently dealt with. If I was in a breakout, I'd be talking about going through the renovation of my house in the last 6 months, which is thankfully finished by now, so just before Christmas. But in that, have a discussion about what did you engage in control, or what can you engage in control with, whether it's a current one or one in the past. What can you influence, and to what do you have to evolve and adapt? And so as one person volunteers and the rest of you ask questions, listen, prompt them a bit on the discussion, and bring back an insight from your group discussion. Right?
Okay, so that's 3 questions, isn't it? What can you engage in control? What can you influence? And what do you have to evolve and adapt? I'm going to open all the rooms now. You'll just have 7 minutes, so you really need to go for it. Open all rooms and off you go. Welcome back, everybody, and it sounded like a really good sessions that were going on there. And back to you, Nancy.
Yeah, well, Andrew, I think that you got to share some insights from your group first, if you don't mind, because John was saying that you were having some interesting conversation. So what I'd like, just a couple of groups to share an insight that came from discussing that in regards to change, whether it's the actual process or just something that came out of the discussion. I'm very open to whatever comes up. Andrew, can you jump in?
Yes, I'm sorry, I've lost video for some reason, but we were just saying that this pandemic has brought about a significant change to all of us, and in particular the decision that we work from home. I actually decided to make that change some time ago, back in 2013. I think it really made the decision, and I decided to close my office and lose the staff and to do the whole of the job myself rather than employing people. And I did that for the principal reason that running a small practice, which is a small architectural practice, which is what I was doing, meant that you pretty much have to accept every job that comes across the threshold, whether you want to do it or not, whether you look like you're going to enjoy it or not, and you do it simply to pay the bills. I decided that I wasn't happy just being a manager and an administrator of the practice, and I wanted to get back to what I trained to do. And so I actually closed the office down, moved the practice to my home, and I now do the whole project from the initial meetings through to concept design and construction and overseeing works on site. And I'm much happier about it.
Yes.
I was saying that it saved me about £500,000 in costs per year, which meant that I didn't have to take on as many projects in order to earn a living. And above all, to put me in charge of the things so that I could choose the projects that stimulated me and that I wanted to be involved with, rather than the ones where you just accept what comes across the threshold.
Yeah, it's interesting, Andrew. Thank you for sharing that with me and the whole group. I'm married to an architect, so very similar story, because he said he felt like dad to 25 staff, and he never got to do the stuff he really enjoyed. He was a manager and a leader of a team, the team, but he never got to do the design work that he really wanted to do. So he did a similar thing, Andrew. And so basically, when you think about the control, you really expanded the control because you wanted to do what you wanted in terms of what was going on with that control circle.
Don't get me wrong, there used to be immense satisfaction walking through the drawing office when they were struggling to design things, and you'd look over the shoulder and just say, if you do this, this, and this, the thing will work. And you leave them and cussing because you've managed to spot the thing that has stopped the design from evolving. So there's a great satisfaction in that.
Yes.
But I think one of the things that I picked this up a lot from my travels across the United States, where people tended to work on their own from their homes with an advertising board out the front to say whatever they were doing, and the geography of the place meant that was probably necessary, and it just seems to me that it's likely to be the way that we're all moving in this country and probably Europe too, and so it just felt like being a little bit ahead of the game.
Yeah. So you're the person in control of how you do it, so you made your own business model there, and it's working for you. That's great, Andrew. Could I have one more insight from another team? Who would like to share one? Unmute yourself, and doesn't have to be the whole story as Andrew gave us, just one nugget from your discussions.
I can offer something.
Great, Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, for reasons of confidentiality, I won't say too much detail, but there were some health issues in the discussion, and it's been particularly difficult in the COVID times, of course, to get any kind of healthcare help. And I think the idea has been to keep asking. So keep asking your GP.
Mm-hmm.
One issue was an eyesight issue, so try different opticians until you can get a referral to get your problem sorted out. You might find there's somebody fresh out of training who's much hotter on referring you to get some treatment, and also to follow things like physiotherapy treatments, or to take whatever medicine you're given, and then go back and say, I've tried what you've given me, can you give me something else? That kind of approach.
Yeah.
So that's influencing. There's waiting lists you can't get around necessarily, but you can get healthcare professionals on your side.
Yeah, what I'm also hearing is taking control of your own health. And it's a subject I'm very passionate about, and part of the work I do from change is also into resilience. And around resilience is your physical health as well as your emotional and mental well-being and various other factors. But being in charge of your own health, not just relying on them and the one answer they give you, but exploring other things. And that's really taking control of that. Great. Well, thank you for that, Chris. Great.
Internet research, and also we did share one or two ideas. So, again, talking to people like we do on a Monday night.
Yeah. Nope, that's great. Thanks. Super. Okay. Right. Well, moving back to our presentation, I just wanted to share a few things with you before we finish, because Derek's giving me hand signals. And so that was great. Thank you for sharing that, everyone. And you can take that and share that model with members of your family, people that you want to coach informally, formally, all sorts of situations, people you're helping with their businesses. This is really, your flexible friend, shall we call it. Now, I wanted to just finish with a couple of observations about change in our brain, and recognize that sometimes we want change, encourage it, it's positive, we're going to get married, one hopes that's a positive change. And then sometimes we get changes landed on us that we don't know is going to happen. The most recent one, of course, is COVID. Rewind to 2008, we had the financial crisis. There's always going to be those moments when change lands on us when we're not expecting it. And one of the issues that we have as humans is the way our brain works, because our brain, as you well know, is a very sophisticated, complex organ. But we still have within it some aspects that are, let's say, more basic or more general with the mammalian world rather than in the human world. And so one of the things that happens with our brain is the fact that when new information comes in, you're taking a new input, whether it's on this call or talking to somebody or going for a walk or anywhere, you're getting new information in, it goes through a part of our brain called the amygdala. Now, some of you will know about the amygdala. The amygdala is basically our security guard. So if it gets triggered that there's something that's a threat to us, it will cause us to fight or flight. So, fight or flight is the standard sort of thing. Oh my goodness, is this a threat to me? Do I fight or do I run away? Now, the amygdala, works well for the zebra on the Serengeti, and it works well for other mammals, the deer in the woods up above where I live. But it also operates in our brain because it's still in there. This amygdala operating as our security guard and triggering us if something is seen as a threat. Now, of course, in the modern world, we don't have to worry anymore about lions and tigers and bears, oh my. We don't have those kind of threats, do we? So do we get triggered? Oh yes, we still get triggered. Do any of you remember the most widely publicized amygdala hijack ever out there in the world? It happened in 2006. I know we've got a lot of football supporters on here. So what happened in 2006 on a football game where somebody had a total meltdown on the pitch, red card, sent off?
Oh, you mean
Zidane?
Zidane, yes. The World Cup final, Italy versus France. And supposedly, this is what happened, supposedly. is that Zidane went to one of the Italian players, and as they're walking on the pitch, going, there's a pause as there is in proceedings, and said to one of the Italian players, "Oh, shall we swap shirts at the end of the game?" And the Italian player said, "I'd rather swap shirts with your sister." And Zidane whacked him in the chest with his headbutt, yeah, and got red carded and sent off. Now, what caused that? Well, that was an amygdala hijack. And so that Italian player threatened Zidane's family, basically. And that was a very basic threat. And he reacted in a very basic fight or flight way, and therefore got sent off. And Italy took the World Cup, whatever it takes, huh? But the point is, there are modern factors that trigger us, that make us want to put our fists through a computer like this. And some of the research that has been done recently by some people known as Lieberman and Eisenberger at UCLA, they've identified 4 different social threats that trigger us to have some sort of emotional response that might even get violent. Put your hand through that laptop screen. And they're around these 4 different areas. And these are also the 4 different areas that have an impact with psychological safety in the work environment. And so this is a topic that I explore in much greater detail on leadership courses, to talk about what can you do to make sure that you don't trigger people in your teams when you're going through change by some of these different factors. Things like the lack of security, not knowing what's going on, that uncertainty, the lack of choice, feeling like you're in a corner, can't do anything, so that control circle's gone right down. Reputational impact in terms of, you think you're not good enough, or they're, going to make you redundant. I mean, the whole redundancy thing comes right in there with reputational impact, and that sense of unfairness. I have lived in Britain for 40 years, and one of the great British values is a sense of fairness. And so people here get really triggered easily on that sense of unfairness. Something's got to be done. So those are some of the factors that can trigger us that we need to be aware of. So let me finish our session today with 2 further thoughts. I'd love to talk to you more. I told Derek I could do 2 days on this, but he said, no, you've got to do it in 45 minutes. 2 further thoughts. Yes, change requires conscious use of energy in the brain. And the biggest user of energy in our bodies is the brain. Okay, it absorbs about 70% of our energy. And that's why when you're going through change, you need to manage your energy, manage your well-being, and being resilient to help yourself support through change. And if you're a leader of a team or a group, helping them too. And I love Rosabeth Moss-Cantor's quote, "Everything can look like a failure in the middle." So we just have to keep going, because yes, to get to the success, we've got to work through it. Right, it's been my pleasure to work with all of you this afternoon. I'm going to hand you back to Derek, but remember, there's always change ahead.
Nancy, thanks very much indeed. That was fantastic. And if you stop the screen share, that will be brilliant. Nancy, if anyone's watching this on YouTube, or they're listening to this on the Negotiators podcast, and they want to talk to you further, how do they get in touch with you?
You can reach me through LinkedIn, very definitely. I'm the only Nancy Loates-Taylor in the world on LinkedIn.
Oh,
so,
wow. That's really special then, isn't it? I thought there might be 2 or 3, actually, as
no,
you mentioned it.
Nope.
So, no, that was brilliant, and a brilliant breakout that you organised as well. So thanks very much, Nancy. And will you stay on once I stop the recording?
Sure.
Fantastic. Okay, everybody. Look forward to seeing you next week when we've got our Christmas party. We've got all sorts of people registered already, so make sure you get your registration in early, because numbers will be limited. And I look forward to seeing you next week for the final session of 2021. Thanks for joining us.